Hi, everyone. Uh, Thank you for listening today, and thank you to B3 for inviting me to come along and talk to you guys. I'm going to be talking about pitching, which is something that we do a lot through my work at Film London, and lots of people pitch to me. The first thing I wanted to cover, and this is important for any conversation, especially pitches, but why should you listen to me? You don't know me, you may not know much about me. Anything I tell you about myself is going to inform what you think of what I'm about to say and how well you listen. So, this is the first thing that I want to tell you about myself, but it's also really important for you to think about this whenever you're pitching or talking to people about a project you want to get off the ground. So, I've got quite a varied career. I've been through and involved in production in various shapes and forms for the last longer than I care to remember. I've worked as a journalist for a magazine called Shots, which covers the creative industries. So I also freelanced a bit for Screen International, which was Shots' sister publication at the time. I've commissioned films for Dazed and Confused, Dazed Media. I worked as an executive producer at Partizan for a long time, signing directors and pitching their work with them, and also having them pitch their work to me. For 5 years, I was Director of Curation at Vimeo, where we worked extensively with lots of directors in all sorts of different formats around the world. But most recently, and for the last 5 years, I've been working at Film London as the head of talent development and production. So we work with filmmakers all the time, again, making lots of different projects. And I've received many pitches. So this is where I'm going to share some insights with you on what we find works and the advice that we give to our filmmakers. So our current work and the main sort of interactions we have with filmmakers is via the BFI Network. We're the London partner, the London hub for their short film fund and the BFI's early development fund. Both of these funds are both for UK filmmakers. You don't have to be British, but you do have to be living in the UK. You can have a look at that on the BFI Network website, which is very easy to find on Google. We also have a first feature fund called Microwave. The picture you can see, Sweetheart, is our latest release. Microwave is a project for filmmakers who want to make a debut feature at a very small budget. It's not currently active, but we're hoping to bring it back soon. We actually just delivered the production finance market yesterday. That happens once a year, and applications open in May. So watch out for that next year. It's for debut or sometimes second features. My strand is called the New Talent Strand, which is for the first features. There is a main market. If you want to make something that's a bit more ambitious, a higher budget, over €1 million, you can go to the main PFM. My strand looks after new talent and emerging filmmakers. So we do lots of support and training to help people get their pitches ready, because PFM is kind of like speed dating. It's a market situation where filmmakers with a finance-ready film meet financiers from around the world. And again, that's very international. So if you are, or wherever you are in the world, you can join in with that one. Watch out in May when it opens again. It's a really good event. And also Upstream, which is a kind of sister, like a little sister to PFM. Upstream is a relatively new project that we have undertaken for the last 3 years. In fact, February 22 will be our third instalment. And it's a bit like Production Finance Market in that it's for filmmakers and creatives who want to pitch projects to financiers or potential partners. But it's a much, much earlier stage. It's for much, much earlier stage projects. So it's for IP that might be coming from podcasts or publishing or theatre or online content or character design, almost anything really. It's for IP from other formats, including short film, which is pitched to a very carefully selected group of potential executive producers or development producers, financiers and investors. So for that one as well, we also help people hone their pitches and make sure that when they present their projects and present their work, they do so as effectively as possible. So I want you to think about your first audience whenever you're thinking about creative work or a film you want to make, a TV series you want to make. You think about the audience that's going to be at the end of the process. But really, if you're thinking about pitching and you want to sell the idea into somebody, you need to get the first audience on board. And that might be somebody that you bump into. It might be somebody that you go to in a formal setting like our PFM or Upstream. But really, it's sort of anyone that you want to get involved in the project. You need to sell the project to them and get them on board. But the pitch you give each person will vary depending on where they are and what they're doing and how ready they are to listen to you. So before we go any further, you have to think about who you're talking to and whether they are in a position to really listen to you and how much time they can give you. Because depending on that, the context that they're in, obviously you have different versions of your pitch for each situation. So people talk about the elevator pitch often. It's a really useful thing to do. Whatever your project is, you need to have one version of the pitch that's very short and snappy. That if somebody just asks you, in a lift or in a lunch queue at an industry event or wherever you might find them, what are you working on? You can tell them in a simple sentence or two what you're doing. Now, this is, the shortest version. It's probably the hardest one or the most important one to get right, because not only is it the sort of elevator pitch or the very short version that you're going to use in passing, opportunities, but also it may well be the starting point for the longer version, where you just have to figure out exactly what your project is. And that is simpler than, that is more difficult than it sounds, because you really need to sell exactly what the project is and what it means to you in a snappy sentence or two that makes people understand what you're trying to do. When you've got someone's full attention and you know that you have a guaranteed time slot, maybe it's a 20-minute meeting at somewhere like a film industry market, or maybe it's, you've booked a meeting with someone and you know that you're going to have roughly 20 minutes, half an hour of their time, you can go into more detail. It's really important that you understand the difference. And if someone's just asking you conversationally what you're up to, you don't go into the full pitch if they're not in a position to listen to it, because that creates an awkward situation, and you may not get another chance to do it again. If you do have time, you need to, you're storytellers. You need to tell the person a story, not the story that you want to make necessarily, and not yet, but tell them the story about you and about the project that will help them buy into it and help them feel excited about it. I find generally when people are pitching to me, as much as I might like the story itself, I get very excited about the story about why they want to make it. And generally there is a story there, like where did the idea come from? What does it mean to you? That stuff is incredibly engaging. And if the financier or the partner that you're talking to is interested in you and the fact that you're really interested in this project, it just is contagious. It helps that sort of energy get passed along. It's also really important to talk about where you see this project going. If you're pitching a feature film, obviously that's fairly straightforward. But if it's a more ambiguous project or it's IP that you see could be a feature film, or it might be a TV series, it could have legs as a game. Think about that and think about where you ideally see this project living, and all the opportunity there. It's also really helpful if you put the person you're pitching to in that story, because obviously, in the best case scenario, you're talking to someone who has the means to help you finance the project, who might invest in it, but they're not just there to give you money. Like, why is this project relevant to them? Or why are they so relevant to you? Why is it that you want to speak to them specifically, beyond the fact that they've got money? It helps if you've researched them and you have something to say about why this is relevant to what they're interested in, or why you think they would be interested in it. And this is what we get to, this is the important sort of crunch bit. Generally, there are 3 reasons why someone's going to invest or be interested in working with you on your project. I'm calling their why. The first of these 3 reasons is the team or you. So the easiest sell is if you have track record or past work that they think is interesting or exciting. This might be you've made short films that have done well on the festival circuit, or you've done some work that they've heard about, or someone has introduced them to you because they think that you're going to get along. If they don't know you personally yet, you need to talk yourself up. You need to sell yourself and talk about, how great you are. This isn't super comfortable for everybody, but it is really, really helpful, because that's generally what helps people understand that this is an interesting person who's pitching what is going to be an interesting project. It really helps in this situation if you're in a team. And if you are in a team, if you're a writer with a producer or a writer-director with a producer, you can sell each other. So if you don't like talking about yourself, have someone in the room with you who can talk about your achievements and why they like working with you, and you can do the same for them. And that helps you communicate all of your sort of career highlights to the person you're pitching to without you having to do it about yourself if you're uncomfortable with that. Talk about what you've done so far, any highlights, if you've had any sort of short film work or whatever it is that sort of speaks to your background, whatever the highlights are. In particular, any external validation. If the person doesn't know you, things like press coverage, festival selection, award nominations or wins, this stuff is really important because it shows this person that you are, you've been validated or your work has been recommended by other people. That helps them understand that this is kind of like a filter, helps people understand that you're somebody that they should be listening to. If you don't have a lot of past work yet, I think it's really helpful to talk about what motivates you and why you want to do this and where you want to take your work, because sometimes that is super engaging and interesting to listen to as well. And if people chime with what you're saying, that can be as helpful as career illustrious career highlights and track records if you don't have that yet. Think about who you're talking to, because depending on the type of person you're pitching to, they have different reasons for wanting to get involved with you. A public funder in the UK, that would be the BFI, BBC Film, Film 4. Generally, they want to help you further your career. Their remit is to develop talent, and they want to know that the work that you're about to do is going to push your career forwards. So when you're talking to them, you can talk about where you are in your career at the moment and how the next project that you want to make is going to help you move forwards and level up. Obviously, if you're talking to commercial funders, they may think that that's nice. They may not be so driven by, good deeds and helping people rise up. But if they think that you're a rapidly rising talent and your next project is going to blow up, then they might want to well be involved in that and be part of that journey. So helping them understand your career trajectory so far and the fact that you're on this upwards sort of path can be really enticing. The second reason that a financier or a partner might want to get involved with you is the potential audience that they see that might be interested in this project. And this is particularly true if they're financially motivated. If you can show that there is a large audience for the type of work that you want to make, or the project specifically that you want to make, obviously they're going to sort of be excited about that. So it might be as simple as, people know that there is an proven audience out there for horror or for sci-fi or for a certain type of subject in documentary. And if you're tapping into that, you just have to demonstrate that and make sure that you state that up front. So it could be genre fans. It might be that you're making something that is related to a book, or following. Maybe you've made a web series online that's done really well, and you want to take it into screen space. Or there's a podcast that's covered this subject that did really well, and you know how to tap into that audience. Anything like that you can use to back up what you think the audience for this project is and how you're going to reach them is super engaging for that kind of partner or financier. There's also really, there's lots of options now for proving your concept or your audience. Everybody talks about proof of concept as being a short film. People often make short films that go on to be features. The one that I hear most frequently is Whiplash. People got very excited about the short film that Damien Chazelle made that went to Sundance. And it's a perfect sort of proof of concept short to feature film story, because the short film did very well. And it was the same script and some of the same cast that translated to his feature film. But it's not the only way to do it. It could be that you try recording your script as a podcast, or, test driving some of the story world and those characters as a podcast. There's also a platform called Wattpad, which we have partnered with for Upstream, which is a super interesting online and social storytelling space where people write narrative prose, and you get feedback. You can publish short stories in chapters, publish it on Wattpad, and you get engagement and comments and likes and follows from the Wattpad audience, which not just helps you understand if your story is successful, but can also tell you exactly what they like about it, which character stands out, which moments are important. If you grow an audience on a platform like that, then the rest of the industry or connected industries are going to pay attention. So definitely research, have a look at those kind of options. But if you are sort of playing in well-trodden ground, if you're talking about a subject that has been covered many times, maybe you're making an environmental documentary, maybe you're making a film about a certain music genre, or a very sort of famous moment in time, you really need to explain also not just that you're sort of back in an area that has a huge audience and that has has been popular before, but how you're moving that subject forward, how your take on this is going to be fresh and new, have a twist that makes it interesting and new. Otherwise, your your first audience and your ultimate audience aren't going to need to watch it if it's already been well covered. So you have to think about what makes it fresh. Your first audience, the person you're pitching the project to, ultimately is the same as your future audience, in that some people are into some things and just not into others. So know that you're pitching to somebody, if you have a genre project, for instance, who is interested in that genre, who works in that genre and knows how to support you. Or maybe you're pitching a music documentary to somebody who makes music documentaries. Make sure that the person that you're speaking to is relevant to your project. And that goes back to the previous slide where I said make sure that you put that person in the story and that it makes sense for them to be part of your story, because there's no point pitching a sci-fi project to someone who is not interested in that genre. Lastly, and this might seem like the most important thing to pitch, and you might want to start with this, but I generally say, you need to sell yourself in first. The idea, the project that you want to make. Now, obviously, this is easier to sell in, I think, to somebody who is already excited about one of the two previous items. So if somebody's very interested in you and excited by your work so far, and you are really excited about this project, they're going to be interested in the project. If somebody who is very interested in the kind of genre or subject that you're dealing with is listening, then they're going to be more interested to see the detail of the project. So that's why I suggest that you go this way around. Firstly, if you are making a non-fiction project and you have unusual access, or if you're making a fiction project but you have unusual rights, that is the first thing to say and spell it out clearly. I've had someone pitch to me recently who had an amazing project, and the last thing that they told me was actually mind-blowing because they have this incredible access to an event that's happening next year. So make sure that you put that stuff up front because it really helps people understand what you're selling. If you're asking somebody to get excited about a script, if it's a long form script especially, it's a lot to take on to sort of promise to read something. So you have to get somebody excited about reading your project and getting into the detail. So your passion for the project and your credentials, your track record so far, really are the only validation for that until they read it. You might have the best script in the universe, but getting somebody to commit the hour or two that it might take to read that is quite a hard thing to do. So you have to make them want to read it by selling yourself, selling your track record. It might be that somebody that they respect and that they rate has introduced them to you. But if you're cold calling especially, you have to make sure that they understand who you are and how excited you are about this project to get them to read it. So when you're pitching a project, I would say sell the headlines, give them the subject, the genre, the tone of the project, the format you want to make, and the log line. This is the very, very basic sort of top line story, not a huge amount of plot detail. One of the most common mistakes we see people who come to our production finance market training make, and one of the biggest things that we sort of advise people on, is if you stand up and tell somebody the plot of your project, it's really hard to take it all on. It's really hard to digest it. So get them asking questions about the plot, and then eventually you can tell them enough that they want to read the script. But if you hit people with a load of plot and sort of detail about what happens to the character, sort of blow by blow across the whole film, eventually they're going to tune out, just because it's very difficult to absorb that and very difficult to sort of remember who everybody is and take it all on. So sell the headlines. This is this is the genre. This is the kind of tone it is. It's going to be a feature film, or I imagine it being an 8-part series, and give them the very top line subject and story. Don't go into too much detail too soon. Then we come to your why, which as I said, I think is often the most engaging bit. Personally, for me, if I understand why someone wants to make something, this is where I get excited. Now, you're a storyteller, I assume. Assume you guys are storytellers. So use your storytelling skills to tell me the story about you and this project, why you want to make it, where the idea came from, why it's important to you, why you think it matters. The tone of the story that you tell about the project and the story that you ultimately want to tell ideally should match. If you are trying to make a comedy, be funny. When you're talking about your project, it's helpful if you're funny, because I then understand that you're likely to be, your project itself is going to be funny when I read it. If you're, I'm not saying you have to be, very terrifying if you're pitching a horror, but make sure that you understand the tone and that it sort of makes sense when you're talking about your project. Again, don't go into too much plot detail too soon, because it can be difficult to stay engaged with that. So don't let people tune out. Don't let people sort of start thinking about what might be happening in their email, or thinking about the wrong element of your project or your team. Make sure you keep people engaged, and set yourself up to get questions from them. Ideally, when we're talking about pitching, it sounds as if you're, I don't know, in the cast of Mad Men, and you're sort of pitching in that very sort of old school advertising style or something. Really, that's not what it's about. It's about starting a conversation, setting yourself up for questions, giving them enough of the information about your project so that they get interested and they start asking you for detail. Once you get them in that zone, it's perfect, because then you can start telling them more, and eventually, ultimately, getting them to read the whole thing. If you've got passion for the project and energy, make sure you get that across. Because if I don't think that you're excited about it, you're not going to be able to make me excited about it. So make sure that whatever it is that really motivates your interest in this project comes across in your pitch, because that is the most contagious thing that you can give me. It's also really important that you tell the truth. This sounds really obvious, but tell them exactly what you have and what you've done so far and what you still need to do. Don't ever overpromise or say that you've done some work you haven't done, or that you have rights you haven't got, because if they find you out later on, it makes the whole thing fall apart. I think it's fair enough if you haven't quite got those rights yet, or you're working on it, or you haven't quite finished the draft yet and you're working on it. Be straight with people. Tell them, manage their expectations, and under promise, over deliver. So the next thing about pitching, and this is sort of very obvious, but often it needs a little bit more thought and work than you might think. You have to think about what you want. Now, this might be a very simple financial ask. It might be that you need sort of creative guidance and mentorship, but you need to figure out really, what do you need and who do you need? Like, are you looking for a specific type of partner? Are you open to lots of different types of partners? And what are you prepared to negotiate? So this might be you're talking to somebody who likes your project and wants to support you, but they want to be able to give you script notes, or they want to have a say over the edit. Are you okay with that? Are you prepared to bring on another writer if you really love this partner and you want to have them involved? Think about what that means for you and for your team, and how flexible you're prepared to be. It's one of those things that, especially if there's team members and it's not just one person pitching a project, you make sure that you're all on the same page and that you can sort of stick together as a team before you go into negotiations with another person. If you're asking for money, if you need financial investment, you need to know exactly what you need and where you're going to get this money from. So you have a budget. Even if it's going to change, you have a budget that you sort of are working to at the moment. You know exactly what you need to get this project off the ground. And you have a rough idea of where you might be able to get the money from. Are you going to ask the person for all of it? Or do you have other partners that you think you can bring in? Having that finance plan, even if it's going to change, is really helpful. I think people are fine with the idea that your numbers might still be a work in progress. If that's the case, be honest about it. Don't tell them something is sure if it's not sure yet. People understand. You might be working on 2 versions of your budget. That's also fine. Maybe there's a sort of very small micro budget version that you might want to try and get off the ground, just so you're going to do it in quite a DIY style. You might also have ambitions to do, our ideal version of this project is a budget that's triple that, or that's, over €1 million, dollars, whatever it might be. If you have 2 versions of the budget, be clear about which one you're talking about, and justify why you have two versions of the budget, because you don't want to confuse people. It's also really important that when you are talking to people about your project, you discuss the next steps and how you're going to follow up. Is it okay if I email you? Can I send you the script? Would you like me to send you the teaser? And make sure that you can sort of have that conversation on email. A few days later, they might tell you, yes, but don't email me this week because I'm about to go to a festival, or yes, but I won't be ready until 2 weeks from now. That kind of information and intel is really helpful, because apart from making sure that you send it to them at the best time for them, it means you're not going to be sitting there sweating, wondering why they haven't replied to you. If they're away, that they're away at a festival or they're about to go on holiday, you know roughly when to expect a response from them and when it's fair enough to chase them. So again, this is another key point: preparation. Again, I've covered this a little bit already, but it bears repeating. Research who you're presenting to. These people generally will have a website, and the website tells you a lot about the company and how you might talk to them. People tell you in the about page of their company what their remit is, what they're trying to do, and you can tailor your pitch to respond to that. So if they tell you that they're all about supporting diversity in the industry, you can talk about how your project is going to address that. You can talk about how you intend to have a super diverse crew that's representative of the population, or that you're specifically interested in supporting a certain underrepresented group. They might tell you that they're all about a certain genre. That helps you understand that if you're talking to the right person or not, that you need to sort of check yourself if you're pitching a sci-fi to a I don't know, a documentary company. It's not going to work. Make sure you've done your homework, and the very sort of clear information that people generally put up on their website, they expect that you will have read that, and it just saves you any sort of awkwardness if you find yourself pitching to the wrong person. Again, public funders versus commercial funders. Public funders are generally in it for supporting the industry and helping new talent break through. I've said this already, but it's, again, if you are talking to us as Film London, or our partners, we work with the BFI, we're really interested in how this project is going to help you level up, how this project is going to take you to the next level of your career. So you can explain what this project is going to do for you, and how it's going to move you forward. If you're talking to a commercial funder, obviously that's less important. They're going to be more interested in things like the commercial scale or commercial possibilities of this project. So you might want to think about that and think about comparable projects, and reference those in your conversation. Again, why are you specifically interested in this person, this company, beyond the fact that they have money? It helps people. I guess it just feels nicer if if they feel like someone is talking to them and has considered why they're relevant or how this project might work for them. Maybe they have past work that is similar, or that was an influence for you, or that you loved. You think that this project is in their wheelhouse because I don't know, they've stated it. Maybe they said something in a talk at a festival, or you've seen them express an interest in it before because they've done that kind of work before. Let them know that you've thought about this stuff. It's very engaging, and it helps. And it's a massive sort of turn off if someone's talking to you and asking for money without having done this homework, because you feel like you're just a walking sort of bag of cash, and they don't really care about that. But it's an easier way to connect to people if they think that you are interested in their past work. Finally, practice. If you're going to be going into a formal session or setting, especially, practice your pitch. Practice the sort of log line and the very top line information the way that you talk about it. Talk about it with your friends and see if it comes across to them. Especially if you're going to go into a formal setting and you have a longer pitch, bounce that off your friends as well. See where they tune out, see where they're interested and where they lean forwards, because that will help you in your formal setting. It's also really important to time yourself. In our markets, we give people generally a 20-minute time slot for their meeting or for their pitch. Make sure that you are getting across all of the key information in time, with enough time left over to have the conversation. So if you have a 20-minute meeting or pitch session at a market, don't take up the whole 20 minutes doing your pitch, because that doesn't leave any time for the person you're pitching to ask you questions. And really that is where you connect as humans and get along with each other. So you maybe want to have, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes maximum, I would say, talking about your project. Some would say even maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And then the rest of the time is for them to get involved and ask you questions and ask for the detail. Obviously, at the moment, we're all in the online space. Here we are right now doing this workshop virtually, pre-recorded. I think if you're pitching online, hopefully we won't be in this space forever. But at the moment, and for the foreseeable, lots of these events are happening digitally, virtually. Treat it like any other meeting. I think we are all getting a bit more relaxed on Zoom. But really, it helps if you show up and you take it seriously as if you were traveling to the event and attending in person. I can't believe I have to say this, but it happened to me recently. Don't eat while I don't think it's nice to eat when you're on any sort of Zoom call, but especially if you're pitching to somebody. I had somebody present a project to me a couple of weeks ago while they were eating a biscuit. And it was really distracting, and it just made me feel like they weren't taking the whole thing seriously. If you need to, it's obviously helpful to have water nearby. People get nervous, your throat might get dry. So by all means, I'm not saying don't sip water if you need to, but it's not a good idea to sit there with a big cup of tea and just keep slurping away. Try and do it discreetly and quietly if you can. Again, we're all used to Zoom. We're all used to people having interruptions from cats or dogs or children or whoever. But if you can close the door, do close the door. I think it's just helpful for you to make sure that you don't get distracted and somebody doesn't derail your conversation. I always advise people to have an Ethernet cable just to iron out any worries about Wi-Fi issues. Again, it can distract you, it can cost you time, and it can knock your confidence. I would also say wear shoes. This is my advice. If you want to sort of feel like you're at work, it helps to give you that sort of sense of formality. Keep your shoes on. Don't do it in your slippers. However, the flip side of that is you might be somebody who needs to feel a bit more relaxed to present properly and feel comfortable, in which case, ignore me, don't wear shoes. But my advice generally is to put your shoes on. Also, when you're in a pitching environment online, it can be very, very sort of efficient. You have your time slots and you come in and out, and it can be very quick. So don't forget to say hello and sort of try and connect as humans. Ask people how their day is going. It sounds really obvious, but sometimes in the sort of stressful environments and sort of with the nerves, you might forget. But it helps to just sort of have a check-in and see ask how they are. Just because you are being pitched to in a virtual environment doesn't mean you aren't open to those things. So try and make that relationship as friendly as you can. We also have to cover what happens if it all goes terribly wrong. I don't imagine it will go terribly wrong very often. But what if you're talking to somebody and you pitch a project and they just tell you this isn't my thing, despite all the research that you've done? The best case scenario is just to pivot, switch it around, and find out why this isn't a project for them. Get to know them a bit better. So if they tell you that this isn't their thing, ask them what is their thing. Find out a bit more about what kind of work that they are interested in or what they are currently looking for and how their work is going at the moment. If they tell you that they usually make genre projects, but right now they're not interested in that genre, find out why. This is really interesting sort of market intel that might help you hone your pitch or sort of update what you're saying about your project that will help you for your future meetings. Ask them questions about what's going on in their world and what kind of work they are looking for. Because if this project isn't their thing, maybe your next project is going to be their thing. If you find out what they are looking for, it might turn out that in 2 years from now, you're working on something that is their thing and you know to come back to them. So there's a long road beyond your current project. And even if this project isn't for them, that doesn't mean that you're never going to make anything that is relevant to them. So just try and connect as people, find out what's going on with them and why they didn't respond to your project. And if it's something that you can address in a future project or in a future meeting, it's good to know that rather than just sort of giving up, getting nervous and running away. So I asked B3 to ask you guys for questions for me, and I got two. So thank you to those of you who sent in questions. The first one, I don't know who asked me this question, but the question was, now that most film industry activities are online, do you think more funding or training programs should be more open geographically, diversifying open calls, particularly the more recognized institutions? What do you think the drawbacks and gains are in doing so? So I think it's a wonderful thing. It's like a silver lining of this pandemic that everything's happening online. Our events have become much more accessible, and we've noticed that, particularly for PFM and upstream, we're getting many more projects and teams applying from further afield than we used to, which I love. It also means that our events are much more accessible, so people who have disability perhaps, or young children and don't find it difficult to get to events in person, are more able to attend. So I think we're going to keep a lot of our events online in the future, despite whatever happens post lockdown. But this question specifically about whether funding and training programs should be more open geographically, I guess it depends what the fund is. A lot of our work, as I said, is with the BFI, the British Film Institute, and they have public money that is there to fund filmmakers who live in Britain. So I would love to open up that fund to people further afield, but really, because of the fund's remit, we're not allowed to fund people who aren't living in the UK. You don't have to be British. You don't have to be making English language work. You don't even have to shoot here, but you do have to be living here. So that, and I'm sure other public funds around the world have similar sort of constrictions. But training programs, yeah, for sure. If you can keep them open, then I think definitely it helps. We love having more international projects. We're trying to spread the word further than we have ever been able to before, to get people applying from different regions, and I hope that will continue. So just because we're called Film London, if this question is addressed to us, doesn't mean that we're only here for Londoners. We're definitely interested in people all over the world. We're very keen to continue our relationships with Europe, but also with America, Australasia, and Asia. Wherever you are in the world, we hope we've got something for you. And even those funding and training schemes that we do, which are for the people in the UK, like the BFI Network funding, we have a program called Short School, which is sort of supports that fund. All of that is happening online at the moment. We're publishing lots of those videos online, so it's more open than ever. And even if the fund isn't for you, the training elements and the videos that get posted about that might well be interesting for you, and it's well worth giving them a watch. I hope that answers your question. Second, I got a question from Rodney Charles, who says, do you have any advice on pitching film or series projects that are rooted in cultural, philosophical, and artistic viewpoints that an executive may not be familiar or comfortable with? Sometimes I feel that they may ultimately need to see my completed vision to culturally and creatively truly understand it. Without sacrificing my core creative specificities, how do you get that commissioning exec to expand beyond what they know and what they have seen done before? And this is a really good question. And I think it's something that obviously people are really trying to address at the moment in terms of just hiring and making sure that we have diversity among execs and commissioners, so that we have a sort of varying viewpoints and varying experience, because that is, I think, the best way to address this. But if you find yourself pitching to somebody who you think may not understand, I think it goes back to that idea of just helping them understanding you. If you can help them get to know you and where you're coming from, why you want to make this project, why it's important to you, and if they're excited about you, then that is the sort of the first thing to address, I think. Also, it really helps if you have made some work that is relevant to the project that you're pitching, so that they can see it. And it's not that you have to make a proof of concept for everything that you want to do, but I think it sort of helps to show an evolution in your work. So if you're coming to us to make a short film, and you're asking for, the top end of our budget for short films is £15,000. You don't have to have made any work before to approach the BFI's short film fund, but it does help if you've done something, if you're asking for the top end of our budget. So maybe you've done some small sort of personally funded short films, and you're building towards the project that you want to make. And I can see what you've done before and why this project makes sense as a next step. That helps me understand sort of where you're going and what your vision, how your vision is kind of growing. If you haven't ever done anything before, then uh, it's easier for people to fund you if you're not asking for the sort of top end of their budget, and you can see that this project is going to take them forwards in a gentler way, I suppose. So you're not going to. I worry sometimes that people are trying to bite off more than they can chew just because they feel like they're approaching a fund. They feel like they have to make something really big and ambitious. I don't think that's true. I think people just want to help you grow. So that if the next project for you is something on a smaller scale that is going to help you work towards your ultimate vision and your biggest, your long form project, that's absolutely valid. And that is something that we, are very happy to do. If you feel like you're talking to somebody though and you have all of this work and you have all of the sort of evolution of your track record, and this is the next project that makes sense for you, and they're still not getting it, it can help to have other people on board. We've had projects that have come to us and they've gone out to creators or filmmakers that they respect, that they think are relevant to them, and ask them to mentor them or ask them for advice. And it might be that you have someone who has profile in the industry, whether that's a filmmaker or an exec, or someone who has consulted on the project or advised on the project and given it their kind of stamp of approval almost. That helps the exec understand that you are reaching out to people who can support you, and frankly that can impress people, that A, that you're doing the work, and B, that you have that person sort of around you, helping to support the project and making sure that you are on track to deliver the best version possible. It's not always easy, and it's a difficult question that I think the industry as a whole is trying to address. And again, as I said, I think the best way to do that is making sure that commissioning execs are diverse and understand a range of points of view rather than all looking and feeling like the same and having the same experience. It's a work in progress, but I would say good luck. I think people are more open to it, I hope, than ever before, and people understand their sort of blind spots and their weak points as commissioners more than ever before. So I would hope that you go out into a world where people are really trying to be better at that. But I think everybody's human. So if you find that you're having that conversation and it's not taking off for whatever reason, go elsewhere. There are other funds, and wherever you are in the world, I would hope there are more ways to approach things than ever before. And ultimately, if you're particularly in the short film or early feature film space, there are ways and means to get work made without relying on public funders, without even relying on commercial funders. So don't let anybody telling you no stop you. If you really believe in a project and you're really excited about it, I think you just have to try and find a way to get that fire going by yourself. One of the things that we've often said, especially around microwave, when we were thinking about interviewing filmmakers and trying to decide whose vision we wanted to buy into, really the people that you get most excited about are the people who you get the sense that they are just going to get this project made whether you're on board or not. It's much more enticing to jump on a train that's moving than to try and start a train moving. You want to talk to people who have that energy and have that momentum, rather than who are just expecting you to do everything for them. So if you are having conversations with execs and you feel like it's not working out, just try and get them excited, give them the impression that the project is going to happen whether they get on board or not, and it's going to be brilliant whether they get on board or not. And that, I think, is often the way to make people worry. Oh my goodness, what if I pass on this project and it turns out to be an award winner? It's going to be amazing. I'll really regret it. So try and just get them excited, give them that impression that you're just going to do it whether or not they say yes, and hopefully they'll come on board. And that's it. That's all I have to say for you. Again, I'm sorry we are not doing this in person. You can find me on social media. You can find Film London on social media. If you want to get in touch, please let us know. We have a ton of stuff out there on the website, on our Twitter, especially all sorts of resources for you. I hope you found today useful, and I hope you'll be in touch. And we'll hear from you soon. Thanks very much, and thanks to B3 for having me.